We're back again to reignite your fervour for educational assessment. Today we're going to be looking at a short blog article written by Daisy Christodoulou in which she presents 4 purposes of assessment but suggests that we can't possibly do them all very well at once. It's intriguing stuff. I am Sam Deno. I have worked in the education industry for 14 years, both in the classroom and as an EdTech innovator. That sounds grandiose, doesn't it? EdTech innovator. Emma McHale, have you got a grandiose description of what you do?
I've done some teaching and now I do spreadsheets for Twinkle. No, I was in the classroom for 12 years as well. I spent a lot of that time doing obviously doing assessment in the year 2 and 6, so the assessment rich year groups, as well as being the foundation subjects assessment coordinator as well, which is quite an interesting one. And now I work for Twinkle with Sam.
Well, that sounds pretty fabulous.
You always forget to be nice about yourself, don't you?
We're here as intermediaries to bridge the gap between assessment concepts in academia and the day-to-day classroom experience. You're joining me and Emma for a 15-minute blast of assessment chat that will hopefully leave you with some practical ideas for implementation, or at least with a mind provoked by the potential of assessment. Here's the thing with educational assessment. There are loads of stakeholders and loads of vested interests and loads of competing reasons for carrying out assessment. Emma, do you think that your attitude has changed towards what assessment does and should do as you've been through the various stages of your career, like classroom teacher, responsibility?
Oh,
EdTech?
100%. I can think of kind of a few even like key moments. I mean, I would say the big ones were, and obviously this is personal to me, but the big ones were having my own children enter the school system, and also post-COVID as well. You know, when there was like I felt like we really became, I don't know, well-being focused, and actually like what are children coming to school for, and what should we be providing for them.
Interesting, yeah.
But yeah, and I think as well, when you're, before I entered teaching, there's definitely a, assessment is SATs and GCSEs. I don't think you necessarily think about that everyday assessment that happens, which personally I love. I if I'd have had time in the classroom every day, I'd have done far more than I ever did.
I think that there was definitely a change for me as my inverted commas customer changed. So as a classroom teacher, then you're working with pupils, and therefore the thrust of teaching assessment is all about, okay, how am I going to get something for the pupils? How can I help them to achieve as well as they can? But then moving into educational publishing, then of course my customer is no longer the pupils. My customer is school teachers, is school leaders. And then suddenly you're sort of seeing things at a slightly different level of, well, okay, school accountability. What do we need to do?
I feel a little bit differently about that though. I think still in the forefront of my mind doing this, like eventually your children are your ultimate customer.
I suppose it depends what the ultimate goal of education is, doesn't it? Is education about serving the economy, or is education about giving people a nice time at school?
I suppose that's the question for today, isn't it? Like, what's assessment for?
Daisy Christodoulou puts forward these 4 purposes. Arguably, there are more purposes for assessment, but she suggests these ones. That assessment is there to serve a summative function. Everyone knows the level of attainment of a student, so that educational institutions or employers can decide how they handle them in the future. So somebody gets a GCSE, and then a sixth form college can say, do we want to take this person on? Somebody gets an A level, and an employer says, are they
Yeah,
suitable for my
and I think
business?
that's what a lot of people, especially outside of the educational community, probably think of assessment as.
Right.
You know, like what if somebody said to somebody who was not a teacher, like, why do I have to bother getting GCSEs? The answer would be, well, because you need to go get a job.
And then Christodoulou suggests another function is a formative function, and this is one that we've spoken about a lot, so that pupils and teachers know what next steps to take for further development. In fact, we covered formative versus summative before in our excellent deathmatch episode. So we won't go into loads of details, but you can already see that there is a conflict there, that one of those functions is trying to bring everything to a conclusion in order to aid decision making. And then one of them, formative, is trying to keep forward momentum and is the opposite of conclusive. Would it be fair to say, do you think, that we're trying to meet both of those functions with Key Stage 2 SATs? We're trying to be conclusive and inconclusive and achieving neither?
Oh, that's a big question. I think it probably depends on the school you're in. I've been lucky enough to work in a school that I would say did a very good job of both of those things. Like, you know, so this is where you got to at the end of year 6, therefore that informs what, you know, what's going to happen in high school, or what they, you know, your new year 7 teachers find out about you, that kind of thing. But also a school that was very focused on improvement and what your own personal improvement looks like as well. I think there are schools who do a less good job of the second one as well, unfortunately, especially at primary stage.
And the problem that you've got, whilst even if you do a Key Stage 2 SAT and you say that gives us a lot on that student, they can carry that forwards into secondary, into year 7, the year 7 teacher is likely to say, don't mean anything, that's not how we do it here.
Yeah, you're going to go in year 7 and have some sort of baseline anyway.
Yeah. The next 2 functions that Christodoulou identifies are accountability, so that the government can determine which schools are doing well, which schools are struggling. I suppose we could go back to that idea that actually this if education is all about serving the pupil, it's still serving the pupil, isn't it? To say let's ensure.
I just don't think that exam results are necessarily should be as prominent as they are in assessing, you know, a school.
Yes. And then national standards is the 4th function of assessment. So actually a country can look at its own record and determine whether or not it's sort of made improvement over a period of time, and then you might get international comparisons, etc. And I suppose that's where when I sort of ask the question of what is education there to do, if education is there to further the growth of the country, then to some extent it doesn't matter to the assessor whether or not the pupil has got a good GCSE or not.
We've done podcasts, haven't we, comparing the system to other countries, and case in point, we are looking to compare ourselves to other countries that are improving their standards and performing well.
So those 4 functions that like I say have so many different stakeholders, so many different people invested in it and investing in it, that's a lot of weight to put on sort of one assessment system. And Christodoulou argues that that's what GCSEs became, at least for a time. Maybe they've sort of moved on a little bit since then, but initially they were imagined as serving that summative function. What grade do you get? Where will that take you? And then they were used to formatively shape curriculum. And then there was an era in which we introduced controlled assessments, they were called, to GCSE, which were they were coursework, but it was coursework under exam conditions, and just many teachers sort of slipped into formative teaching habits in spite of being told this is exam conditions, you are not to sort of feed back to your pupil. Well, of course, a lot of teachers broke those rules, and then GCSEs were used for league tables, nationally, internationally. And so you had all of that weight on that one exam. Now Christodoulou argues that we've moved past that, and that the pressure on GCSEs has been lifted somewhat with Progress 8, which is this measurement from based on Key Stage 2 SATs to the end of secondary school. And then she also suggests the National Reference Test being used for national standards. As for key takeaways for day-to-day classroom implementation, I've got a short list here. Emma, has anything come to mind for you?
As a classroom teacher, I would assess children so I could find the gaps and help them improve. That was definitely the function that it was taking for me. I don't necessarily think that classroom teachers think about the other possible functions of it. And I think that could be a nice takeaway as something to just keep in mind, that actually all of these other things can be fed into by the assessment system as well.
I think that it helps to have the context and to be aware of those various market forces that push and pull curriculum and assessment decision making, even if it doesn't sort of directly feed into anything you do in your day-to-day. Well, you'll never guess what's number one on my list. Incorporate a practice of formative assessment.
Always. I think this is something me and you definitely agree on.
So that you're always listening to what your students know and using your understanding of what they know to shape onward development. Regular low-stakes tests such as quizzes are one example of how you could achieve this. There are loads of ways to do formative assessment. There's loads of stuff online. Inevitably, I would recommend Twinkle, because I work for them, as a source for loads of top downloadable stuff, as well as one of Twinkle's partner companies, Educate, who have online quizzes. But there's plenty more besides, both free or subscription based, that sort of offers formative assessment opportunities. Second thing on my list, where appropriate, prioritise the teaching of skills in exams.
Oh, I love that.
Over knowledge.
Yeah, very. I love a skills-based curriculum. That's my personal opinion, obviously, but yeah, big fan.
Yeah, we can't all do it, unfortunately, but in theory, if you're teaching more skills than knowledge, then those can be carried forward by pupils after the exam. Whereas knowledge often becomes meaningless, doesn't it, after the fact? And then my last one, if possible, all assessment should be formative, even when it is summative. If you have the opportunity to work with the students again after a big assessment, then make sure that both you and the pupil learn from any missed opportunities and use that to determine onward learning.
Use those summative assessments to inform something rather than just going, oh, look, a load of A's.
I think that's plenty enough, isn't it, for today? I think we've gone through some interesting stuff there. And hopefully...
I think this was an interesting one, thinking about what the purpose of why are you assessing children? What does it feed into? Something that I think teachers probably think about less than we could. And
look, you've gathered it all in this 15-minute blast. Doesn't have to be onerous. You could just listen to Obsessed with Assessment podcast. Don't forget, you can get in touch. You could email us at assessment@twinkle.co.uk. You could also leave a comment if there's an option to do that on the podcast platform. And what else can you do? Like and subscribe, tell your friends, share this.
I was going to say, and go have a nosy at our lovely assessment material on Twinkle. A shameless plug.
And have a fabulous week. We'll see you soon.